Hey everyone, my name is Jackie Zoe. As you can see, this is who I am, a little bit about me. I am part of Data Theorem's go to market team. So I've been working with enterprise organizations for over 10 years, advising on technology. So it's really great to be here with all of you today. The topic for today is really why security teams are urgently chasing API security. Now, first of all, welcome to an API run world. Powered by cloud. We are living in a cloud centric world where cloud adoption among enterprise organizations is over 94%. And in the next coming years, the biggest, most sustainable businesses are primarily, if not all, going to be on a cloud infrastructure. Now, what does that have to do with APIs? Well, we're going to talk about three things in the next 30 minutes. First, I'm going to level set and kind of talk about what the current state looks like to really frame our discussion today. Second, we're going to put our hacker hat on. In the spirit of sort of know thy enemy, I'm going to show all of you how easy it is for even the lowest tier hacker to get information out of your applications. And third, a quick start guide, right? Developing a strategy. What are some best practices in developing an API security strategy? I'm going to talk you through 5 steps and give you sort of a framework and template that you might be able to follow or kind of keep in mind throughout all of this. So, first things first, let's level set. I want to take us down memory lane a little bit about, a little bit of cybersecurity history. Now, the reason why cybersecurity exists is because there are adversaries and malicious attackers that we're looking to protect against, right? And the hacker mindset has remained the same throughout time. What is the easiest and cheapest way for me to attack and get what I want, right? What is that soft underbelly? And so over time, innovation has really driven incredible technological advances. Each new era introduces a transition right into our new world, into our security world. We meet every new era with new defenses that we create, deploy, and further strengthen over time. As a result, we're forcing attackers to really find other areas of weaknesses. And more often than not, it's always the next new thing. So, thanks to the ingenuity of really brilliant people like those who are listening right now, right? New counter tech is created to harden the security and make the hurdle even higher for bad actors. So we think about the 70s during, the network era, right? Antivirus became, that new invention to help protect us. Then it was endpoint devices, right? Laptops, mobile devices. Now we've got firewall, 90s website, right? The big, boom in internet, SSL, right? Cloud, 2000s to 2010s. We've got CSPM. Today, where we are is kind of in that little nook, right? This is where we are. We are at another transition point. Our adoption and embrace of cloud technology has really shifted every organization's attack surface. So, cloud infrastructure, owned by the big three AWS, Azure, GCP. Now, while they own the infrastructure, organizations like ours are really left being responsible for the APIs that facilitate the transfer of data between these different programs. So, you might be wondering now, all right, cool, cloud's in, what is this again? What does this have to do with APIs? All right. So let me show you kind of a bit of a visual, right? Now, from a security standpoint, this is really critical to understand. Today, organizations might have the following. You've got cloud. Awesome, right? Cost savings, simpler, easier maintenance, built-in compliance frameworks. Everything is working. So logically, the question is, how do we protect it? Well, first thing is let's make sure nobody can get inside of it. And second, let's make sure our configuration is clean. Now, what we're seeing here is a very traditional perimeter defense approach where firewalls, intrusion detection, border routers are all put in place. This is early 2000s stuff, right? Then comes the 2010s where we've got CSPM solutions focused around configuration and hygiene. Now, the challenge with this approach is that it's just not foolproof, right? Even with these in place, we are still seeing data breaches reported all the time. So why is that? The reason why is because our new world is a distributed architecture. Not only are our servers being hosted in, cloud, private cloud, we're also leveraging software as a service from multiple vendors. We're cooperating with business partners, right, and their systems. And for those of us who are more mature, or even those who are software companies, we are building our very own applications and tools against these cloud services. So to protect all these little bubbles, right? To take that traditional infrastructure approach just isn't really scalable. And to try to protect all of these buckets of information, some of which isn't necessarily ours to control, right? With, SaaS solutions and vendors that we bring in, it's not feasible. So what are we missing? What we're missing are these. We've overlooked the highways of communications that's really making our new world possible. With the embracing of cloud comes what I say the proliferation of APIs. And APIs are the most overlooked hacker playground today. They're the communication railroads that touch some of the most sensitive or critical information that we really are stewards of. So because of the growing attack surface, the API attack vector has really become the prime target for cyber criminals to exploit. So, let me kind of share an example here in the healthcare industry. Reason being, I was able to find some concrete data on this. Now, the purpose of sharing this is really just to showcase how cloud adoption is really driving the need for API security. If we take a look at the number of data breaches over time, you'll see that it's increasing. All right, awesome. Now, what we care about is, what's more important is the size of those breaches. How bad is it? So, with an evolving strategy, you would want to see the size getting smaller or staying the same. And now we actually do see that, right? Everything prior to 2018 is relatively flat, but we don't see that here. And during this time, this was the COVID pandemic. What happened during that time? Now, this period was a catalyst, right, for technology adoption among this particular industry. So they've adopted, a lot of things like telemedicine, mobile health, cloud-based EHR, remote patient monitoring. This is all cloud technology that typically sits on a cloud infrastructure that is ideally compliant to the stringent standards of healthcare. Now, with all of this already in place and the fact that we're seeing bigger breaches, it means, right, that it's more than just a cloud problem. So let's take a look at API related events in numbers. If we take a look at purely just the number of API counts in the wild, we could argue that only smaller organizations are impacted. This makes sense. Smaller organizations have less mature security programs, we could argue, right? However, the number of API events is a little misleading. So, what we want to do is we want to introduce the percent of events attributed to APIs by revenue. When we do that, we see a whole different story. Now, here we're taking a look at the percentage of API events to all security events and lining it up to the company size, right? So, what we see here is that companies in the billions face an elevated risk of experiencing an API related incident. And this is likely because of an increased deployment and utilization of APIs. And so therefore, this is resulting in higher exposure. So, really any way you slice it, big or small, API security really does have to be a security priority. And so high level in the last 12 months, 92% of organizations have reported one or more API related security incident. Now, this is based off of an ESG report about, securing the API attack surface. So, you know, the reality of it is our new world is a connected one. And that's a good thing, right? We want a connected world. It's, that's how incredible innovations and that's how scale is made possible. But with this new sort of world, the reality of APIs is this. An organization has on average 127 third party API connections. Think about all the different vendors, right, that you guys are leveraging within your organization and all the API connections that are required to get your systems to talk to each other. 2 out of 3 cloud breaches are due to misconfigured APIs. And according to Akamai, right, they're looking at all web traffic and they're finding that 80% of current internet traffic is actually from API traffic. Historically, we thought traditional web app security, was enough. But as you can see now, right, that's not the case anymore. Now, the silver lining in all of this is that these things are actually pretty easy and pretty simple things to remediate. The solution to all of it is really just visibility and understanding how these attackers are getting access to APIs. So, why have APIs become the most common attack vector? Well, simply put, very few organizations have a single source of truth regarding what exists in their environment. APIs are often right? The thing that that provides direct access to the most valuable information, and the number of opportunities or doorways that are increasing every single day because of the sheer number of entry points is just is just there. So, and most importantly, right, we're just not looking. This is just an area that a lot of folks are not paying attention to. And therefore, it's making APIs kind of this green field to start planting wildflowers. So, long story short, it's just easy, right? APIs are an easy target. And so, I want to show you in the next 3 to 4 minutes, we're going to put our hacker hats on, and I want to show you how easy it is for bad actors to really target your environment via APIs. So, why pay attention before we dive in? Data Theorem, our heritage runs in the hacker community. So, founder, engineers, all considered hackers. Really, because of that heritage, we are hyper aware of the techniques that are employed in the real world. Now, we know what to protect against because we've seen it. We've made a business out of packaging that knowledge into an automated, continuous workflow and platform. And what we found, fascinating or maybe not so fascinating, breaches are due to really simple things. Things like missing authorization, embedded password, leaky API, right? These are akin to a key, leaving your key under the mat of your home or having a window with no blinds. And these steps are what hackers take to find these things, right? And it's, again, done in a very simple manner. Let me access that application. Let me then inventory the APIs, interact with them, see what I can get. And if there's any sensitive information, we're going to target those and then we're going to exploit it. So let's kind of walk you through exactly what that looks like. We're going to put our hacker hat on and show you how a bad actor accesses the information they need to get into your system. At the highest level, we just talked about the tactics used. I'm going to walk through each and every one of them individually. Step number one, accessing the application. Now, there are numerous ways to do this. In our new cloud world, right, this is where applications or software are running the world. They're the windows into our network. They're the thing that the humans are interfacing with. So this is often entry point number one. And now we're going to assume that we are past the firewall. We have access to maybe a device. And as we're all familiar with insecurity, humans are the weakest link. So we are going to assume breach, right, that we are past that perimeter defense. The question is, what's next now that we have application access, right? What have we put in place? Now, we are going to inventory those APIs and we're going to use tools available to me as an individual to crawl your application. If it's a mobile application, we'll decrypt it. But essentially, I'm looking for APIs and gathering intel on what's happening here. So let me kind of show you a little peek into what I mean. So what you're seeing right now is Google. So this is an application we're all very familiar with, hopefully. We probably use it every single day. And I'm going to go ahead and go into developer tools. Now, I'm going to right click, go into developer tools. And developer tools, for all of you who don't know, this is often leveraged as a quality tool. So it's not nefarious, it's just information, right? That's going to be helpful for me as a hacker. Now, the network tab here is where I want to go. This is where I'll get a peek under the hood as to what the application is communicating with. I'm going to go move over to fetch. There's a little fetch tab here. And this is just going to give me a cleaner view of the APIs I want to focus on. And immediately we're able to see interesting stuff. We're able to gather a lot of good intel on what this particular API does. You're going to see request URL, address, response headers, request headers. And if we take a look at preview, we're going to get some valuable information on what this API actually does. And you're going to notice that the words here, we're going to go ahead and click preview. We are going to notice the words Lionel Messi Barcelona. Now, what is this? Well, if we go to the search bar here on the left, we interface with the application. We'll see that Lionel Messi is actually the number one thing trending search. So as a hacker, I want to start playing around with this. Can I manipulate it? So I'm going to copy as fetch and paste it into my console. And again, this is the console that is provided to me here. And let's go do that in console. Paste, and I'm going to change the one that we see up in the beginning to a 25. I'm going to hit enter. And we're going to interact with the API without even touching the interface here on the left. So if we go back to network and select the call we just put through, you're going to see car show Rick Ross. Guess what that is? That is the 25th trending search. So take a look. We just manipulated this call without even touching the application itself. Now, this is really interesting, right? So what I want to do is go to something even more interesting. I am going to go ahead and go to a web application that we've created for demo purposes, where we've gone ahead and built, where we've built in a vulnerability. So what you're seeing is a simple application that stores and takes orders. We're going to do the very same steps as we saw before, where we're going to right click, we're going to go to developer tools, and we are going to go to the network tab. So right click, hit inspect, open up developer tools, and we're going to go straight to network. And just like before, we are going to simplify our view and we're going to see, right, if there's anything interesting. Now I'll go to fetch and ta-da, we see th2 get orders Python. Ooh, this is interesting. If we click it and we hit preview, we've just struck gold. This is a leaky API that just gave me a whole ton of valuable information, right? Credit card, ID, address, name. So, what we saw here, this is really an example of how a hacker is interacting with the APIs very easily through a web browser. Now, I didn't download anything, I didn't install anything. For those of you who are familiar, right, with other tools out there, right, you know very well we could do this at scale, right? As a hacker, this would essentially go undetected by traditional security tools. And to scale these efforts, we would typically leverage a man in the middle proxy to automate all of these manual steps we just saw. There might be some additional steps on, the hacker's end to do it, but the point is the data you have is valuable enough to warrant these extra steps. And we're doing all this literally just to gather intel. We're ultimately looking for sensitive data to exploit because once we do find that sensitive data, right, taking us back to our example, information like this is hitting the jackpot. Not only was this specifically, this was an example of an embedded password in the API request, but it is one of the most, it's a very common low hanging fruit vulnerability. And if we were to go back to the headers, we would see, right, and confirm that this is an authenticated API with an embedded password in the request down at the bottom, X API key. So we would take this as a hacker and we would build a quote unquote weapon to scale this for, excuse me, to scale this for exploit. This is how these hackers are pulling tens of thousands of data records from our system. So although this seems like kind of a silly mistake and oversight, it's a lot more common than you think. And when it comes to innovation, developers are incentivized to push revenue generating features out as quickly as possible. So mistakes are bound to occur. And I say this not to point any fingers, it's really just to understand that it is our responsibility as security leaders to know that this is the reality of the situation. So, you know, 2 out of 3, right? Cloud breaches are due to misconfigured APIs. And if we were to take a look at this visually, if some, give you a little bit more of a visual context, this is a very vulnerability that I showed in our example. You're seeing the complete attack path based on a full stack analysis. We saw the web app out on the public internet, had a vulnerability exposed. That vulnerability was related to this API operation that we saw. That's this wrench icon that you're seeing. And it was made possible because it was exposing information sitting on an AWS Lambda function, right? So, really kind of taking us to a framework we all are very familiar with, defense in depth. With so much time and energy that we've spent on this concept of perimeter defense, right? Things like antivirus, managed firewall, email gateway. Now, this stuff is all really important. And we've got to spread the love. The traditional approach of building walls and hardening the outside can no longer be the sole focus of a security strategy. The reason being because applications, right? Applications are becoming that new entry point in the last 3 years. And that's due to the introduction of cloud, right? So just making it so easy. And so building a culture of security is important, security training is important, but at the end of the day, to prevent and protect against data breaches, we need to continue to evolve with our adversaries. So, you know, API security is already becoming the next big thing in cybersecurity. I'm saying this because we're talking to a lot of organizations, a lot of security engineers, security leaders about this very topic. We've been supporting some of the biggest, baddest customers out there on this for 5 years. This is the next wave. Now, the question is, how do we handle this? So I've put a quick start guide for security leaders here, and it has been boiled down to 5 simple steps. Right? 1, determine your current position, prioritize your objectives, assemble the right team, execute, review, and refine. I'm going to kind of whiz through these a bit and kind of show you guys, right, what we are able to accomplish here. Now, step number one, determine your current risk position. API sprawl has become the top reason that poses a threat to API security. So we need to first answer the key question: what APIs do you have, right? What problems exist? You can't fix what you can't see. This is where having a single source of truth around your API inventory becomes truly foundational in approaching this challenge and identifying the problems or issues among that inventory. Having a continuous and automated offensive testing in place is extremely valuable. Now, your tech landscape is going to be probably too big to manually do all of this. Now, you could technically do it via a SWAT team manually, but the recommendation is truly to automate this. Reason being, your man hours are better spent in steps 2 and 4. Step 2 is all about, right, prioritization. Among the issues that are found within your API landscape, you got to understand not all APIs are created equal. Here's a checklist I've gone ahead and created, really as a recommendation for you and the team to leverage based on whether something checks all of the boxes or some of them. This is where you're going to have to make some business choices, right? As security, we're already running really lean in many cases. So as leaders, we want to make sure that the right call is being done on, you know, where your teams need to be focusing on, right? Or else it becomes too overwhelming. So this checklist really just serves as a handy tool to help. An API's priority is not determined by one factor, but by many. An API with one person's social security number and is internally facing only may not be as important as an API with tens of thousands of emails and is externally facing, right? That's up to the business though to decide. So with a combination of this, so this is why combination of this is so key to really helping with prioritization. They're all important, but it's a matter of, which you want to address first today. Now, once you have the priority, you want to assemble the right team. So I've gone ahead, I've put together a RACI chart to highlight the cross-functional nature of APIs. Although security is ultimately responsible, it is the engineering team, right, or partners that are going to be accountable for execution. It's the DevOps teams that are going to be consulted with to help simplify the process and reduce any friction. And as the product owner, it's really critical that they are made aware, right? As we look to strengthen the security culture, it's critical to ensure that this product team is involved and informed because what they're putting out there, right, is going to impact other areas of the organization, especially when it comes to risk. So, one of the biggest oversights in strategy execution is measuring success. And you'll see here that we have the word measured execution. Now that we're addressing top priority items with a targeted and manageable list that we've created, over time, you want to see, all right, is what we're doing working? You're going to want to have these KPIs handy. This is how you will measure whether a strategy is working the way you had originally intended. What are your most targeted APIs? What are the top attack types? List of successful attacks. This is going to change over time. But initially, the most targeted APIs or the list of successful attacks will change. It'll decrease because you are actively, right, putting in plans to reduce them. So that's all really good, and that's how you measure. Now, once everything is measured, right, you got to review and refine. It's a journey. When it comes to fortifying the security culture in your organization, you really do want to openly discuss the trends that you're seeing. You want to discuss the patterns and root causes, and you do want to upskill and educate your A team that we talked about earlier. So it's important to remember this is all about continuous progress. As your program matures, you're going to just find that you're moving from firefighting, which is a lot of us today, to proactive repair, to eventually preventative hardening. And, over time, you're going to find similar problems coming up. And these may be systemic issues, and they will highlight what vulnerability classes your organization is prone to. Now, this is a good thing because it's going to encourage you to keep evolving your program. And if you're doing a good job, right, these problems are going to change. Now, before we end, I'd love to leave the audience with this. And it's first, take a deep breath, right? There is a plan. All you have to do is you take it layer by layer. And I guarantee you have something in each and every one of these layers that we have here. Stay true to the defense in depth approach, right? All I'm saying today All I'd like to recommend is that you prioritize the softest, most vulnerable of the bunch. And that's here at the application layer. This is where the APIs live and play. So thank you all so much for the time. Again, it's all about APIs. And if you have any questions, please reach out directly. We'd love to have a longer, more in depth conversation on how we might be able to help you. So have a good one, all.